There's something honest about a machine that's been around longer than most of the music it still makes. This is a Studer B67. It's not nostalgic. It's not romantic. It's precise. And when it's looked after properly, it still does something that very little modern gear can. In this episode, I'm on the bench, fresh off a full service, talking about what goes on in keeping a machine like this alive, why it matters, what fails, what tools you actually need, and why the work is simpler and more important than people think. This isn't about tape versus digital. It's about intention and committing to sound and understanding the tools you trust your music to. This is the Studer B67, and this is why it's still here. Okay, wow. We're back. So I want to show you something cool today while I have it on my bench. And so we decided to just roll along and cut this. So what I've got here is my Studer B67. It's a magnetic tape machine. It's a 1/4-inch machine. It runs at 15 IPS, 7 1/4, 3 3/4. So IPS is inch per second, and that's the speed that the tape rolls at. And different speeds do different things if you're super technical about it. And want to dive deep, but that's not what I'm here to do so much today. I want to talk about this machine. It just had a full service, and I've owned it for quite a while. It came from the Beach Studios, which was a Calgary almost film production studio for a long time here in the city. And when they closed, at some point when they went to digital, it went to a friend of mine, and I got it, and I used it in my room for a lot of years. And then it started to die and have a lot of problems. And so it took quite a bit of chasing and servicing, but we finally got it. And I'm excited to tell you about what we did. And now it's back in the arsenal, and how we're going to use it in the studio. And then I want to talk about tape and why tape is cool, analog tape is cool, and some of my former experiences about it, and how it shaped my workflow today. And so it's some really exciting stuff, kind of nerd out, but here we go. First of all, we'll talk about this machine and what work was done. So the first thing that happened is that there's capacitors in the AC motors that get old and expire. So this machine, we dated it from 1982. So kind of near the end of the production line of the B67. It was really popular in post-production facilities and radio stations. So they were mass sold. So a lot of them ended up in home recording studios or smaller project studios. But it was getting past its age. So especially the AC capacitors on the motor boards dry out over time. And this type of capacitor is kind of like a ticking time bomb. It'll explode and like smoke and can damage parts further down the chain. So that's what happened at first to my take-up reel. That was the first chase, but then it took a long time. But then I finally sat down and I threw it on the bench yesterday. And after about a full day's of service, we've got it up and running, and we're pretty happy. I do notice that there is some tape tension with all the weight on the supply reel. So I hope that corrects. I didn't notice this before. So I may have to do one more full alignment on it. So maybe I'll film that and show you guys how I do it and post that up later. So keep an eye out for that. But so we replaced the RIFA capacitors on the AC motor boards, on the capstan, the supply motor, the take-up motor. So that's good. Those will live another 45 years. And we started replacing the old Fracco caps. So these are electrolytic capacitors, and they basically have a chemical fluid in it that expires and ages and evaporates over time, which does change how they operate. And my approach is when something gets past its recommended life of 20 years, we try to replace everything. So I got about 20 caps here we pulled that I all had in stock from actually the MCI console restoration I did earlier this year, leftover caps, which was pretty common or pretty nice to have. And there's a few capacitors I need in the repro cards, which are the reproduction cards, which are in charge of the playback of the machine, of the audio, that I've ordered from Mauser, and they'll be here in a week's time, and I'll throw them in. So I'll have to do an alignment all again on it anyways. That was pretty cool. And then I had to do some brake tension work because the take-up reel was not spinning properly in play mode, especially when it had a lot of weight on it, and it was stalling out fast forward. So we had to take a look at that and basically had this machine right down to its skeleton and then back up and running and sounding great. We also do an alignment. So an important thing when you own a tape machine, let's talk about quick, is the MRL tape. Now, this is the reference tape that you use to align the repro heads, which are your playback heads. And this comes factory to 0, and it just plays a bunch of tones and frequencies, but you know that this is your standard, and you calibrate your machine to this, and it's true 0 reference levels. So you set your machine to this first, and then you do a record alignment after, because this will tell you where to dial in everything, because behind this panel is a bunch of cards, and you EQ it, and you set the azimuth, which is kind of how the tape rolls on the heads, which is really important with a stereo machine like this or any tape machine. And I'll show you that once we get it back up on the desk, and we have the phase meter. So some cool little maybe side videos I'll make, which will be fun to do. Let's talk about why this work matters. When you got an old machine like this, they're built solid to work in production studios to run 16 hours a day. So they were often ran that way. This machine had an exclusive deal with the BBC, and these things are all over the world because of the BBC. So in various configurations, there's a ton. They come in a ton of different models. And let's talk about it quick. This is a Mark II B67. They need to be cared for a lot of times because these were all put away because they stopped working. And tape, or because you went to digital, and now they've been in storage for a long time. And this was in storage before I got it, but it operated pretty well. And I didn't necessarily, I knew the basics to get it up and running, but I didn't know how to maintain it. So after a few years of use, it started to malfunction. It got just kind of put away and was kind of more a display piece. But I really want to use it on certain things because I love the tape sound, and it's a tool in my toolbox that I want to use on certain things, and it's great to have for various things, and we'll get into that. So we've replaced the electrolytic capacitors that dry out, and we've replaced the AC motors, caps. So we've done a few things. I also lubricated everything where I could. I felt the bearings were all pretty good and the brakes were operating fine still. That was all good news. So I think this service will keep this thing running for quite a long time. Let's talk about the tools that I used quickly, because it really wasn't that much. No magic, nothing crazy. Really, I just had a soldering iron, a couple of Allen keys, a multi screwdriver, a cup of coffee, my tone tester, my Behringer tone tester. This thing is amazing. I use it all the time. Cable tester, test tone box. It's a 6-in-1. Super cheap. Use it all the time. Some solder wick, some solder, side cutters, a caliper to make some measurements for the parts that I needed to order, some rubbing alcohol, a toothbrush, and some all-purpose 3-in-1 oil. And that's it. And I did it all right here, and this thing didn't even spin or function, and it didn't even power up, actually, when I sat it down on the bench. Really, it just takes determination. I use the iPad for the manuals, everything you can get online. I think I got the manual for the B67 on Analog Rules. If you're a repair tech or an audio guy who deals with old gear, the site. They host all sorts of manuals, and I sent them a thank you because it's free, and they're obviously spending their time to host it. So I think it's important to thank them and just let them know they're appreciated, because I'm sure people just take it all the time and don't say anything. So if you're doing that, find the time to respond, and I think that's important. It helps people, with why they do all this, to help, and it's good to get positive feedback. That's really all I used. There's no mystery, just some determination, some research, some hard work. And I made a couple mistakes, but nothing major. This tape tension is coming up a little bit now that it's losing some weight on the supply reel, but yeah, once I replace those caps, I'll make some notes. Oh, and I have a notepad here where I just made some really small notes. Really, I didn't have to write down much. Really, just some wire diagrams for things I unplugged and a caps list, so I could dig through my stuff and find it. So, oh, and this awesome BC Ferries pen with floating ferry that we've probably had for 18 years, maybe 15 years. That's what we used here. And why the B67? Well, it's what I have, but it's a pretty cool machine. So, and what we're going to use it for in my studio is we're going to use it for a few different things. It's a really nice, clean machine. It was made for broadcast. So it does pretty transparent mixes. It's not overly flavorful in this, it does saturations, but not over saturations well. So it's really transparent for mix downs. If you like to work on live mixes and print mixes to tape, with just enough saturation that it's gonna give it some warmth and some harmonic distortion, and just maybe fill in the gaps between the noises well as a glue. So that's a really cool way to use this machine as a print down, as a print to print mixes, either digitally or live. Live mixes are fun because there's a physical process of playing the machine, mixing the board, wrapping it all up, and really just being in focus and in tune with your equipment and the job that you're doing. It's really thrilling to get outside of the box and push buttons and work with your hands. So that makes it pretty exciting that way. Another tool we'll use it for is a saturation tool. So maybe we want to send the toms or the guitars through it to drive it a bit. Guitars will be cool. Maybe a guitar solo, maybe some backup vocals, maybe the lead vocal. Really depends. And we'll print the multi-track from Pro Tools. We'll print maybe the bus or an individual track onto it just to get some of that saturation if it needs it. And that's mostly what I'll use the machine for here in the studio. It has set speed controls. So currently it's not going to work well as a tape delay, a true analog tape delay, but it does have a capstan speed out, which I'll have to develop a little box because I can't find it. And I think that's within my range. But it's just a speed control. So then I'll be able to use it as a true analog tape delay, which I'm excited about, but that'll come down the road and needs a bit of development. But I'm excited now that it's repaired and it's operating great, and we're going to get it back in the rack, in our mixdown machine rack, and we're going to use it because it's a lot of fun. I won't use it all the time, but we're going to use it definitely quite often. So I want to go back and talk about tape and why tape's cool and why I don't use it all the time anymore. So I used to run an all analog for a lot of years with a partner. I ran an all analog studio with kind of mid pro gear from the late 70s. And it was an all MCI rig, and it was all brown, and it was super cool. We made records without computers, and this was, maybe about a decade ago. And it was a lot of fun for the growing and learning as an engineer and a producer and a musician. And we craved to work that way because it definitely shapes your workflow. Because all we knew before that was digital, and we had gotten our hands on this equipment, and it was a lot of fun, but we didn't know how to maintain the equipment. So lots of things were breaking down, and it was at times pretty chaotic. But we would overdrive things, and we would learn and experiment, and it was a lot of fun to get to do that and build tape loops and just create and learn the workflows of an older generation or an older world that we've lost today. Really cool. But, there's a lot that goes into that. You've got to do alignments. You've got to make sure everything's, because there's so many mechanical issues that can come up that can affect how this equipment operates. And if you're not on it or know how to do it, the equipment can deteriorate quickly, and it can affect the work that's coming out. But a lot of work goes into it. You think these old studios used to have maintenance technicians and tape ops and people that were dedicated to servicing and operating these machines. And we don't have the budgets or the overhead to do that stuff anymore. So it's really changed, and you really it's changed for me how I use the equipment. We loved to just overdrive everything. And last year I had to go dig through my files and dig up an old record that we made back in those days, because they wanted to release it properly digitally. And it was a stoner rock record, and it was really heavy, and it was a really fun record to make. We cut it. It didn't touch a computer. We cut it to 24 track, 2-inch tape. We had a matching MCI rig, and then we mixed it all down to 1/4-inch tape, and it was a lot of fun. And so I had to go find those mixes and the mix prints and on tape, and man, they were so overdriven, but there was a vibe to that record. I'd never do it that way again, but looking back, but you almost have to go to the edge, before the next time around you say, I'm not going to go that far again. So really cool to learn the workflows of it too, how to commit to 24 tracks and how to creatively mic and capture everything and build a song in that way, and how to perform, how to commit to a performance and accept what's on tape and be good enough to play what's on tape. Really cool, transformative part of my engineering and production career. Where I'm at now is I use tape more as a tool. I'm no longer, I don't have the equipment, but I'm not going out to buy a 2-inch machine. That's a lot of work. And I'm pretty happy with how things are sounding coming out of here. Digital conversion has come a long way. And if you have the right analog tools in your toolbox, I think all tape is exciting if that's what you're doing. And I did it for years, and this is where my workflow has developed now. I want to move quicker. I want to spend less time maintaining and setting up equipment in my studio. So digital is really going to help me with that. We still mix on faders and or whatever. We do whatever the project, whatever the work, we serve the work, right? So, it was hard to run that kind of studio, and now we've changed, and this is what we're doing, and it's really cool. Tape is still relevant today. A lot of people are using tape, and I think it's great. It's a format that is exciting, has limitations, has great potential when you use it just right. But also if you can be used to manage your workflow, which is exciting. That's really cool. It's really great to have a machine like this. What I'm excited about is the ability to maintain and service this machine so that when I go to use it, it does exactly what I want it to do. That's important because you don't want to have any downtime in a session to be maintaining the machine. As a single engineer studio, you need to be able to rely on your equipment and have it functioning and not have downtime on the session. And you want the artist to be excited when you go to use the machine. And it's hard to be excited when the machine doesn't work. We talked earlier about alignments, and kind of one of the golden rule for a technician or an engineer is to never do a tape alignment while the artist is in the room, because it's really annoying. And it has to be loud sometimes, and it's just frequencies and buzzes, and you don't want your artists to have to sit through that. Not everybody's interested in hearing that experience. So you want to have everything aligned and maintained and properly running before your session. And a service like this, and how much I'll use this machine, will just be great. It'll be rock solid for a year probably, unless I notice an issue with it. We'll throw on the tape, not necessarily to align it, but just to check that it's in alignment. And that's all we're going to do until we see a change in how it operates, a change in tape that we're using, maybe a change in components that we've replaced. And that's when we'll do a whole new alignment. So, up to a year, it'll sit there. Next January, I'll check it out, and hopefully we'll use it on a ton of projects. And I'm really excited about it. And I'm excited about how when you want to use this tool to shape your workflow, and you want to wait and pause and rewind, that's always a good thing too. When you do your mixes, it gives you time to breathe. It gives you time to step away. There's instant gratification or instant movement in digital. Hit it again, hit it again, hit it again. And it can sometimes blur if you're not focused, kind of the whole process or what you're trying to do, because it can move pretty fast. So you know, this is a tool to break that up if you need to. Thank you for listening today. I liked showing you my tape machine. It's pretty exciting to have it up and running, and I got to run it through Play for pretty much the whole video, so that's exciting. And we're gonna throw it in the rack, and I'm gonna cut some more videos. But thanks for taking the time and checking this out, and enjoy your day. Cheers.